Good evening and welcome to News Review. This week we learned that the European Commission was of the opinion that Spanish controls at the frontier are disproportionate. Following the visit by the group of experts on the 2nd of July, the Commission expressed serious concerns at the lack of progress from Spain, adding it's also concerned at the complaints it continues to receive over lengthy queues.
Following the first visit by the Commission in September last year, recommendations were put to both Spain and the United Kingdom. On the 2nd of July, the Commission sent a team to the ground to see whether the recommendations had been taken on board and what measures to aid traffic flow had been implemented or were in the process of implementation by the authorities on both sides of the frontier. According to the Spanish press, Spain has been asked to carry out a risk assessment at the frontier to concentrate on smugglers, but at the same time guarantee the flow of traffic. It's also recommended that the physical space on the Spanish side of the frontier be put to better use, and that plans for an improved frontier be revisited. The Commission has asked the Spanish government to improve the exchange of information over tobacco smuggling with the Gibraltar authorities and establish daily cooperation with these. Also, according to the Spanish press, when it comes to Gibraltar, the Commission has called for the ROC to introduce legislative measures to combat tobacco smuggling and daily cooperation with the Spanish authorities, as well as improved exchanges of information. It's also asked Gibraltar to carry out its own risk assessment for travellers and luggage leaving the ROC. GBC understands the Commission is aware that Gibraltar has actioned the recommendations and has therefore not expressed concerns regarding the local authorities. The government has also implemented further measures since the last visit. A government spokesman has confirmed it's in possession of the Commission's letter of the 30th of July, and a full statement is expected tomorrow.
Meanwhile, Number 6 welcomed the news, saying the Commission is finally talking the same language as the UK and Gibraltar. And the Chief Minister says he feels vindicated in his approach to tackling the border issue.
The Commission said it recognised that Spanish checks at the border are disproportionate. It expressed serious concerns about lack of progress on the part of Spain in implementing previous recommendations and noted the continued high volume of complaints received from Gibraltar about long queues. The Chief Minister, Fabian Picardo, said the Commission is now, after 2 inspections, talking the language the Gibraltar and UK governments have been talking over the last year. He says the Prime Minister was unequivocal in referring to the queues created by Spain for its own politically motivated purposes as disproportionate, and is pleased that the Commission is now fully in agreement with that description. Mr. Picardo says that after the first statement from the Commission, when some were expressing disappointment, he said this was a marathon, not a sprint, and now feels entirely vindicated in that. He says it has taken a year, but the Commission have seen the reality of this situation for what it is, and is now not hiding its displeasure with the Spanish attitude. Mr. Picardo says Gibraltar has shown that the position of the PP government in Spain is unsustainable, untrue and unfair, but will nonetheless continue to seek dialogue as the way forward to avoid unnecessary confrontations in the future.
And the GSD welcomed the news. However, the party said the report is based on comments made by a spokesman for the EU Home Affairs Commissioner and is not an official statement. The GSD understands also from these same press reports that a further letter dated the 30th of July has been written to presumably the UK and Spain, making further recommendations to be met over the next 3 months. Acting leader Damon Bocino called on the government to disclose the letter, believing that it is clearly a matter of public interest and importance. It also calls on the government to say if it's received any further documents from the Commission. In other news, the so-called occupation of Gibraltar planned by a Spanish workers' union has been cancelled after the union met with the Platform for a Humanitarian Frontier. A demonstration against social injustice will be held instead on the same date in La Línea.
The Sindicato Andaluz de Trabajadores had planned to demonstrate in Gibraltar, calling it a fiscal paradise and a colonial enclave. However, the SAT's Diego Cañamero now says his union doesn't wish to disrupt good relations between the workers on either side of the frontier. The union no longer plans to enter Gibraltar, with a demonstration to be held instead at the La Línea bullring on the 29th of August. It's to protest against social injustice, unemployment and the frontier queues. However, the demonstration will still also protest against tax havens. In response to GBC questions, the SAT said it does believe Gibraltar is one of the 14 such places in Europe. The Platform for a Humanitarian Frontier said it had wanted to meet with the SAT to express its disagreement with the planned occupation and also to clear up any misconceptions or lack of knowledge about Gibraltar.
Basically, the meeting was very heated out, a lot of heated discussion during 3 hours of us explaining what Gibraltar is, how it's changed, because they were focusing on the fact that they're considering it a tax haven. What they wanted to do is carry out an action whereby this tax haven is a symbol of all the tax havens, and this one's the one that's nearest, and they were occupying it the same as they've occupied Mercadonas and other companies. So we were explaining that it's not the same, that you have to know the area and that you just can't use the word occupy when you're talking about a state or an area, a country or whatever. And we reasoned everything. We reasoned all the tax haven legislation. We came to an agreement that we couldn't agree on that, but that there's no need to use Gibraltar as the symbolism of that. And we explained the particularities of the area and how they will be damaging precisely the people and the ideals that they want to protect.
The Sindicato Andaluz de Trabajadores says it'll also be requesting a meeting with the Chief Minister Fabian Picardo. It says it still supports the Platform for a Humanitarian Frontier and believes the frontier should not be used to make life difficult for workers.
The Chief Minister this week described the European Commission's ruling that Gibraltar has not breached any environmental legislation in relation to bunkering, the East Side Reclamation and the artificial reef as hugely significant. Speaking to GBC, Fabian Picardo said the ruling is a huge step forward in snookering the site of community importance declared by Spain in the southern part of Gibraltar waters, and also in recognizing at a European level that the waters of the isthmus are of British sovereignty, jurisdiction and control. Mr. Picardo spoke to Stephen Nish.
What the Commission has therefore in effect found is that the northwest artificial reef created by the Gibraltar government, it has found has been created within our jurisdiction, within our member state, in the waters of the Isthmus of Gibraltar, and that it has no transboundary effect on what the waters of the other member states, Spain, may happen further along. So that is a hugely significant finding for Gibraltar about sovereignty, jurisdiction and control of that water. Equally hugely important, if you allow me to just continue the answer for a little bit longer, is the finding that the bunkering that goes on throughout British Gibraltar territorial waters, and some of it goes on in an area which Spain has very disloyally tried to designate as its own SAC, or LIC as they call it in Spanish, is happening in a manner which is in keeping with the management of the environment in the area. That must mean that the only relevant SAC for the Commission in determining that is the Gibraltar SAC, which allows bunkering in that area.
So the European Commission has got itself into a little bit of a quandary, if your interpretation is correct, because what it said now conflicts with the Spanish waters designation.
The site has been designated, or the Commission has allowed Spain to designate the site as a Spanish site, but the Commission has obviously had to consider very carefully what its power is, and its power is not to grant jurisdiction beyond that which is recognized by the member states to each other in UNCLOS and in other international documents, and therefore the only relevant sovereign party in respect of that area of water is the United Kingdom member state. And what the Commission has done is, well, whatever, I think in my view, say, whatever I may have done by recognizing the wrong lick at the wrong time because Spain behaved so disloyally, the only management plan I'm going to recognize is the Gibraltar management plan, And the Gibraltar Management Plan allows for bunkering in that area. So therefore what people need to understand is that this is a huge step forward for Gibraltar in snookering the SAC declared by Spain in the southern part of Gibraltar waters, but an equally huge step forward in identifying at a European level only, that the waters off the Isthmus of Gibraltar, those which we have often been told by Spain are the ones she feels more sure of because the Isthmus was never ceded, etc., what the reef has done, and anybody who understood the international legal implications of creating the reef there would have seen this coming. What the reef has done is put at a European level now, beyond peradventure, the fact that that is British Gibraltar territorial water and that there is a boundary with Spanish territorial water somewhere beyond.
Tuesday saw an illegal incursion into British Gibraltar territorial waters by a Spanish naval vessel. The Royal Navy challenged the 90-metre-long patrol boat Infanta Cristina in the waters off Europa Point. HMS Scimitar followed the Spanish vessel after she entered Gibraltar waters on the east side of the Rock. When contacted on VHF radio, the Spanish vessel alleged that she was in Spanish waters, as she did earlier this year in a similar incident. The convent is treating this as a violation of sovereignty and a breach of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Another formal protest is expected. And we'll be back with more of this week's news after this break.